When his son pointed at the crying bride and shouted, "That's my mama!" the rancher froze. The sun was low in the sky, painting the wide plains in shades of gold and orange. On the Hale Ranch, the air smelled of fresh hay, warm earth, and the faint scent of livestock. Thomas Hale, a tall man with broad shoulders and a face carved by years of hard work, moved steadily across the yard. He was a man of routine. Every day he rose with the sun, tended to his animals, checked the fences, and made sure everything on the ranch ran smoothly. Life had taught him to be disciplined and strong, especially after losing his wife years ago. Raising a young boy on his own had been challenging, but Thomas had never allowed the ranch or his son, Samuel, to feel the absence of love too sharply. Samuel was 6 years old, but carried a wisdom and awareness that often surprised the adults around him. His small hands were quick to help, his eyes observant, and his imagination vivid. He loved exploring the ranch, following his father to see how the chores were done, asking endless questions about the animals, the land, and life itself. Yet there was a sensitive side to him that made him different from other children. Samuel noticed things others ignored. The way the wind whispered through the trees, the way a lost bird struggled to fly, or how people hid sadness behind polite smiles. On this particular afternoon, the ranch was unusually busy. Thomas had invited a few neighboring ranchers for a small gathering, a casual event to celebrate the upcoming harvest. Horses were being groomed, fences inspected, and meals prepared. Despite the activity, Thomas remained calm, moving with careful precision as he gave orders and tended to the animals. Everything was normal, predictable, and safe, exactly the way Thomas liked it. That calm, however, was about to be interrupted. A distant whistle of a train echoed across the plains, carrying with it passengers from towns far and near. The sound brought curiosity to the ranch staff, and even Thomas paused for a moment, looking toward the horizon. He did not expect anyone in particular, just the ordinary comings and goings of life. But as the train slowed, a small figure appeared on the platform, someone who seemed out of place amid the cheerful travelers. Her name was Emily. She was young, with dark hair falling in gentle waves around her shoulders. Her eyes were large, expressive, and glistening with tears. Something about her presence made the air feel heavier, as if the world had paused to watch her. She clutched a small bundle to her chest, her fingers tight around the fabric as if it were the only thing keeping her safe. Emily had recently lost her family in a tragic accident. The grief was still fresh, raw, and she had wandered from town to town seeking a place where she could belong. She stepped down from the train with hesitation, unsure where to go or who to trust. The crowds of passengers rushed past her, voices blending into a noisy hum that made her feel even smaller. Her eyes darted around nervously, and for the first time in many days, she allowed herself to cry quietly. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back sobs, but they escaped anyway, shaking her shoulders. A few people glanced at her, some with curiosity, others with impatience, but no one stopped. On the porch of the Hale Ranch, Samuel was playing with a small wooden horse he had carved himself. He had been watching the train from the edge of the property, fascinated by the movement of people and the clatter of the wheels on the tracks. When he noticed the crying girl, something inside him stirred. It was difficult to explain. A pull of familiarity he had never felt before. He watched as she tried to gather herself, wiping her tears on the sleeve of her dress. Samuel stood up, his small legs moving quickly toward the fence, pressing his tiny hands against the rails as he stared. "Dad," he said, tugging at Thomas's sleeve. "Look, the girl, she's crying." Thomas glanced down at his son and smiled gently. "I see her, Sammy. She looks like she's had a hard day." Samuel's eyes didn't leave Emily. "No, Dad. She's like someone I know." Thomas raised an eyebrow. He had learned over the years that Samuel sometimes spoke in riddles, his imagination mixing with reality. "Someone you know?" he asked, intrigued but cautious. Samuel nodded earnestly, his small face serious. "Yes, I don't know, but I feel it. She's important." Thomas chuckled softly, thinking it was a child's fantasy. He returned to his work, checking the corral, while Samuel remained focused on the young woman. But Samuel's attention did not go unnoticed by Emily. She had been aware of his gaze, sensing a kindness in his eyes. For a brief moment she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of safety, though she still kept her distance. Emily wandered closer to the ranch gate, uncertain if she should ask for help. Her steps were hesitant, her body tense, and her eyes flicked toward the ranch house as if she hoped someone would notice her without needing words. That someone was Thomas, who had paused mid-step while moving feed to the barn. He noticed her standing alone, small and fragile against the vast landscape of the ranch, and something stirred in him. Perhaps it was empathy. Or perhaps it was an instinctive awareness that she needed help. Thomas approached slowly, his boots crunching on the gravel path. "Hello there," he said, his voice calm but strong. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" Emily looked up quickly, startled. Her eyes met his, wide and uncertain. She hesitated, searching his face for any hint of danger. When she found none, she nodded slightly. I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted softly. Thomas took a careful step closer, offering a hand. "Then you're welcome here, at least for now," he said gently. Samuel's eyes widened as he watched the interaction. He felt a surge of joy and certainty. Something inside him shouted, "That's her! That's my mama!" But he kept the words to himself for a moment, unsure how his father would react. He watched as Emily's shoulders relaxed slightly, and for the first time in days, a small, genuine smile appeared on her face. The ranch hands, who had been busy with chores, now glanced curiously at the scene. Emily looked different from the usual visitors. She carried an air of quiet sorrow that was impossible to ignore. Thomas noticed the subtle way she carried herself, the way she held her head slightly bowed yet with dignity, and something deep inside him stirred. He could feel the weight of his own curiosity, a mix of concern and fascination. Samuel, unable to contain himself, called out, "Mama!" His voice was small but clear, filled with excitement and certainty. Thomas froze, turning to look at his son. Emily's eyes widened in surprise, and she stepped back, unsure how to respond. Thomas's heart skipped a beat. He had no idea what was happening, yet he felt an undeniable tension in the air. The moment hung suspended, as if time itself had slowed. The ranch, usually alive with activity and noise, seemed quiet in comparison to the silent connection forming between the boy and the young woman. Thomas's mind raced, trying to understand Samuel's words and the feelings he saw in his son's face. Something extraordinary was beginning, something that neither he nor anyone at the ranch could yet explain. As the sun continued to set, painting the sky in deeper shades of gold and red, Thomas realized that life on the ranch would never be the same. He did not yet know how or why, but the presence of the crying girl standing alone with a small bundle in her arms had already begun to change everything. Samuel continued to watch her with unwavering certainty, and Thomas, for the first time in many years, felt a mixture of hope and uncertainty, an unfamiliar but welcome feeling. And so, on that warm afternoon, in the quiet stretch of land, surrounded by the rolling plains, a simple encounter began that would alter the course of their lives forever. Emily had arrived at the Hale Ranch not knowing the family she would find, and Thomas had noticed something he could not yet explain. Samuel, with the clarity and innocence only a child could possess, had already recognized a bond that would bring them together, even if the world around them was still uncertain and chaotic. The ranch, the boy, the man, and the girl all stood on the edge of something extraordinary. And though no one could see it yet, destiny had quietly begun its work. Emily stayed near the gate, unsure whether to step closer or turn back. The sun was sinking lower behind the hills, casting long shadows across the ranch, and the air was warm but carried a gentle evening chill. Her small hands clutched the bundle tighter. It was only a few belongings wrapped in a piece of cloth, yet it represented everything she had left in the world. She glanced at Thomas, who had paused, waiting patiently, and then at the boy standing behind him. There was something about the child's gaze, serious, almost knowing, that made her feel less afraid. Samuel didn't move closer right away. Instead, he stood on tiptoe, his little hands gripping the fence. His eyes never left Emily's face. He had a certainty in his heart, a certainty that went beyond explanation. To him, this girl was not just any stranger. Somehow, in ways even he couldn't fully describe, she felt like home. The way her lips trembled as she tried to hold back tears, the slight quiver in her shoulders, and the faint scent of lavender she carried. All of it spoke to him. He had never met her before, yet something inside him knew she was important. Thomas said again, softer this time. "I'm Thomas. This is my son, Samuel. You don't have to be afraid. We don't bite." His voice carried a calm reassurance, steady and firm. There was no judgment, no impatience, just a simple invitation to trust. Emily's eyes flicked to him, measuring his expression. There was honesty in his face, a kind of gentleness that made her hesitate less. I'm Emily," she said quietly. Her voice was soft, almost fragile, yet there was a trace of strength beneath the surface. She had learned over time that showing fear could make people see her as weak. She didn't want that. And yet, speaking her name aloud felt like a small act of courage she hadn't allowed herself in days. Thomas nodded slowly. "Well, Emily, you're welcome to stay as long as you need. There's food, water, and shelter. And Samuel here has been hoping to meet someone new today." He glanced at his son, smiling faintly. Samuel returned the smile, wide and bright, and Emily felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. "Samuel, unable to contain his excitement, stepped closer to the fence. "Hi," he called. "Do you want to see the barn? I can show you around." His words tumbled out in a rush, almost spilling over each other. Emily's lips quivered and she blinked rapidly, not expecting such openness from a child. There was something comforting about his energy, his innocence. Emily hesitated, but Samuel's enthusiasm was contagious. Slowly, she moved toward him, still holding her bundle tightly. Samuel took her hand, small and warm in his own, and led her toward the barn. Thomas followed behind, keeping a careful eye on both of them. He noticed the careful way Emily moved, how she scanned the surroundings as if making sure nothing could harm her. She was cautious, but there was curiosity in her eyes as well. The barn was a large wooden structure, filled with the smells of hay, horses, and earth. Samuel's eyes lit up as he showed her around. "This is Daisy," he said, pointing to a chestnut mare with a white stripe down her face. "She's my favorite. She's gentle, but she likes carrots a lot." Emily smiled faintly, reaching out a hand to touch the horse's soft nose. Daisy nudged her hand gently, and Emily's smile grew a little wider. It was the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in a long time. Thomas watched quietly, sensing the bond slowly forming between his son and Emily. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but he could feel it in the way Samuel's shoulders relaxed, the way his eyes followed her movements, and the way Emily responded to his small gestures of kindness. Something was happening here, something unexpected and extraordinary. After showing her the barn, Samuel led Emily to the small vegetable garden near the farmhouse. "I planted these last spring," he said proudly. "See the tomatoes? And the carrots? You can help me water them if you like." Emily knelt beside him, gently touching the soil and feeling the rough texture of the plants. For a moment the grief she carried seemed lighter, softened by the simplicity of the moment and the child's unguarded joy. Thomas prepared a small table outside the farmhouse with bread, fresh milk, and fruit. He had noticed that Emily had barely eaten since arriving, and he wanted her to feel comfortable. She sat quietly at the table, hesitant at first, but Samuel offered her a piece of bread with a smile. "Here," he said. "It's fresh. I made it this morning with Dad." Emily took it, her fingers brushing his briefly, and something inside her stirred. There was warmth in the gesture, a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. As the sun dipped lower, Thomas finally spoke, trying to ease the tension that hung over them all. "Emily, if you feel comfortable, you can stay here tonight. There's a guest room upstairs. You won't have to sleep alone outside." Emily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. She nodded slowly, still cautious but beginning to trust him. Samuel, sensing her hesitation, spoke up quickly. "Mom, I mean, you can stay? It's okay. I promise it's safe." His words tumbled out, clumsy but sincere. Emily blinked in surprise. The boy's certainty was striking. How could he be so sure? Yet there was something in his tone, a conviction that made her heart feel lighter. She smiled at him, shaking her head softly. "Thank you, Samuel," she said. Thomas cleared his throat, gently reminding both of them that the evening was drawing in. "Why don't we get you settled, Emily? Then you can rest. Tomorrow is another day, and I'm sure Samuel will want to show you more of the ranch." Emily nodded again, carefully following Thomas toward the house. Samuel ran ahead, eager to help her up the stairs, pointing out the pictures on the walls and the furniture in each room. Once Emily was settled in the guest room, Thomas sat outside on the porch, watching the sunset. Samuel climbed beside him, leaning against his father's arm. "Dad," he said softly, "she feels like someone I've always known." Thomas looked at his son, considering his words. "I know, Sammy," he said quietly. "I feel it too. Something about her is different." They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the ranch settling into the evening. Horses nickered softly, the wind rustled the leaves, and the sky changed from gold to deep shades of purple and blue. In that quiet moment, Thomas realized that Emily's arrival was more than coincidence. There was a connection here, one that neither he nor his son could explain yet, but it was undeniable. Samuel finally spoke again, his voice small but full of conviction. "She's going to be part of our family, Dad. I just know it." Thomas swallowed hard, feeling a mix of hope and fear. He had spent years protecting his heart, afraid of losing someone he cared about again. Yet seeing the bond between his son and Emily, he understood that some connections couldn't be ignored or denied. They had appeared for a reason, and he would have to open his heart, whether he was ready or not. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Emily lay on the bed looking out the window at the glowing horizon. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to hope. She didn't yet know what the future held, but she sensed something safe, something welcoming in this place. and somewhere deep inside she felt the gentle pull of a bond that would grow stronger with each passing day. Samuel, already half asleep, whispered into the night, "Good night, Mama." Though Emily was not yet officially part of their family, his words carried faith, love, and certainty. And Thomas, watching from the porch, finally understood that sometimes life had a way of bringing the right people together in the right place at the right time, even when it seemed impossible. The ranch was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, but beneath the calm exterior, something extraordinary had begun. A young woman, a small boy, and a careful, weary man were on the edge of a new beginning. And though none of them could fully understand it yet, they were all connected by something powerful, something that would change their lives forever. The morning sun poured into the guest room through wide wooden shutters, casting warm golden light on the simple furniture and the small pile of belongings Emily had brought with her. She stirred awake slowly, feeling rested but still nervous. Last night had been the first time in a long time that she felt safe. The warmth of the house, the gentle presence of Samuel, and even the quiet attentiveness of Thomas had created a sense of comfort she had almost forgotten existed. Downstairs, Thomas moved quietly through the kitchen, preparing breakfast. He had woken earlier than usual, unable to shake the feeling that today would be important. There was a heaviness in the air, a mix of anticipation and uncertainty. He was careful not to rush Emily, knowing that trust would take time. He glanced at the clock, then at the staircase leading to the guest room, wondering how she would respond to the new day. Samuel, already awake and full of energy, ran into the kitchen. His small feet pounded against the wooden floor as he skidded to a stop near the table. "Dad, she's awake! Can we have breakfast together?" His eyes sparkled with excitement. I want to tell her about the chickens and the new calves." Thomas smiled, shaking his head at his son's energy. Of course, Samuel. Let's give her a few minutes to get ready. Then you can show her everything you want." Meanwhile, Emily stood by the window, looking out at the wide fields stretching into the distance. She could hear the soft sounds of the ranch coming to life, the lowing of cows, the clatter of horseshoes on the barn floor, and Samuel's cheerful voice calling to her. She felt a mixture of nervousness and curiosity. How much could she trust these people? Could she allow herself to feel like she belonged again? Her past had taught her caution, but something about this ranch and about this small boy made her heart beat with a flicker of hope. Finally, she took a deep breath, adjusted the simple dress she had been given to wear, and went downstairs. Thomas looked up as she appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Her steps were slow but confident, and there was a quiet grace to the way she moved. Samuel rushed forward, taking her hand without asking, and led her to the table. "Sit here," he said, gesturing to the chair next to him. "I saved the best spot for you." Emily smiled softly, feeling a warmth in her chest she had not experienced in years. She took a seat, her eyes briefly meeting Thomas's. He nodded reassuringly, silently giving her permission to relax. Breakfast was simple but hearty. Fresh bread, butter, scrambled eggs, and warm milk. Samuel chattered endlessly, telling Emily stories about the farm animals, the seasons, and his adventures exploring the fields. Emily listened attentively, sometimes laughing softly at his excitement. Her own voice returned slowly, hesitant at first, but growing steadier as she answered his questions and joined in his stories. Thomas observed quietly from across the table, watching the connection between the boy and the young woman deepen with each passing moment. He noticed how Samuel's small hand occasionally brushed against hers, how her eyes followed his every movement, and how she smiled in a way that suggested a growing sense of belonging. There was an undeniable bond forming, one that neither Thomas nor Emily could fully explain yet. After breakfast, Samuel insisted on showing Emily the rest of the ranch. They walked together to the pasture, where horses grazed quietly, their tails swishing lazily. Samuel pointed out each horse by name, recounting little stories about their personalities and habits. Emily listened with fascination, her earlier hesitancy slowly fading. She reached out to touch the horses gently, and Samuel watched her with a proud smile. As they walked, Samuel's small hand occasionally found hers again, and Emily did not pull away. It was a subtle but powerful connection, a quiet acknowledgement that they belonged together in some way. Thomas followed behind, maintaining a careful distance but ready to intervene if necessary. He was aware of how delicate this moment was, understanding that trust could not be rushed. Eventually, they reached a small grove of trees at the edge of the pasture. Samuel paused and turned to Emily, his eyes wide and serious. "Emily, I think you're someone very important to me. I don't know why, but I just know it. His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Emily's heart tighten. She knelt down to his level, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Samuel, I feel something too," she said softly. "It's strange, but you make me feel safe, like I'm supposed to be here." Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the depth of her emotion. Samuel's face lit up with a smile, and he threw his small arms around her in a quick, sincere hug. Emily hugged him back, feeling a warmth she had not felt in years. Thomas approached slowly, clearing his throat to announce his presence. "I see you two have met properly," he said gently, trying to keep the mood light. Emily turned toward him, her eyes meeting his. There was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken questions. Thomas could see the trust beginning to form between them, but he still felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. "Emily," he began carefully, "I want you to know that you're safe here. You don't have to explain yourself all at once. We'll take things slowly. I just want you to feel like this can be your home, if you want it to be." Emily nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She had spent so long running, hiding, and fearing the world that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to belong. Thomas's words were a lifeline, a promise of safety she had not dared to hope for. Samuel squeezed her hand, looking up at his father with a hopeful expression. "Dad, she's perfect. I know it. I can feel it." Thomas looked down at his son, his heart aching with love and protectiveness. He had always wanted the best for Samuel, and seeing his son so certain about someone made Thomas reconsider his own doubts. Perhaps, he thought, Samuel's instincts were right. Perhaps Emily was exactly what their small family needed. As the day went on, Emily continued to explore the ranch with Samuel. They fed the chickens together, collected fresh eggs, and even helped Thomas repair a fence that had been damaged in the night. Emily's hands were small but strong, and her willingness to help impressed Thomas. He could see that she was more than just kind. She was capable, thoughtful, and resilient. By mid-afternoon, they returned to the house for a brief rest. Emily sat on the porch, watching the sunlight dance across the fields. Samuel joined her, leaning against her side comfortably. "Emily, do you think maybe someday you could stay here forever?" he asked softly. Emily looked down at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She nodded slowly, unsure if she was ready to say it out loud, but feeling that it was possible. Thomas watched from inside the house, glancing out at the two of them. He felt a mix of relief, hope, and caution. The connection between Emily and Samuel was undeniable, but he knew that love and trust took time. He would have to be patient, allowing them both to grow comfortable with each other, and yet he could not deny the pull he felt toward Emily as well, a quiet awareness that she was someone who could change their lives in ways he had not anticipated. Later in the afternoon, Thomas finally spoke with Emily alone. "Emily, I need to ask you something," he began cautiously. "Your past, it must have been hard. I don't want to pry, but I need to understand at least a little. Samuel he feels a connection with you, and I need to know if you feel it too." Emily took a deep breath. Gathering her courage, she told him simply and honestly about the losses she had endured, the towns she had wandered through, and the loneliness that had filled her life. Thomas listened carefully, his expression unreadable. He could see the pain in her eyes, the traces of sorrow that had followed her for years, and yet he could also see the light beginning to shine through, the strength and kindness that Samuel had noticed so clearly. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said quietly. "It takes courage to share your story. And I think Samuel is right. There's something special here, something we can't ignore." Emily felt a mixture of relief and hope. For the first time in years, she believed that she could have a place where she belonged, where she could be safe and loved. Samuel's certainty, Thomas's cautious acceptance, and the warmth of the ranch all combined to create a sense of possibility she had never dared to imagine. As the day drew to a close, the three of them, Thomas, Samuel, and Emily, sat together on the porch watching the sunset behind the hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange, pink, and purple, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the trees. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, yet it carried the weight of an unspoken promise that this meeting, this connection, was the beginning of something extraordinary. Samuel leaned against Emily, whispering softly, "I knew you were my mama." Emily hugged him gently, feeling tears well up in her eyes. Thomas placed a hand on both of their shoulders, feeling a mix of awe and gratitude. Somehow, against all odds, they had found each other. And though the journey ahead was uncertain, they knew that together they could face anything. The next morning dawned with a soft, golden light spilling across the Hale Ranch. The air was fresh and crisp, carrying the faint scent of hay and earth. Birds chirped in the trees, and the horses nickered quietly in the barn. Everything seemed calm, ordinary, and peaceful. Yet beneath the quiet, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken feelings and fragile emotions. Today, Thomas knew, would be a day of decisions. Emily stirred awake before the sun had fully risen. She felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The previous day had been extraordinary in its own quiet way. She had laughed, shared stories, and, for the first time in a long time, felt seen. But the bond she was beginning to form with Samuel, and even with Thomas, stirred deeper feelings she wasn't ready to name. Could she trust them completely? Could she allow herself to believe that she could belong here? Her past, filled with loss and loneliness, whispered caution. Still, her heart yearned for connection. Downstairs, Thomas was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, moving carefully, as if each gesture mattered more than usual. Samuel, already awake, bounced into the kitchen, his small feet making cheerful thuds against the floor. "Emily's awake," he announced, his voice full of excitement. "Can she come see the new chicks? I want her to see them before breakfast." Thomas smiled faintly at his son's enthusiasm. "She'll be down in a few minutes, Sammy. Let her get ready first." But he could see the joy on Samuel's face, the way his small hand kept gesturing toward the door. Samuel's excitement was contagious, and Thomas couldn't help but feel a tug at his own heart. Emily appeared at the bottom of the stairs a short while later, her hair brushed neatly and her simple dress tidy. She had spent a few moments collecting herself, preparing for the day, and trying to calm the flutter of nervous anticipation inside her. When she stepped into the kitchen, Thomas and Samuel both looked up. Samuel ran forward immediately, grabbing her hand and tugging gently. "Come on, come see the chicks," he said, his eyes sparkling. Emily smiled softly and followed him outside. The sun was higher now, warming the air, and the fields glimmered with dew. Samuel led her to the small coop near the barn, where a new batch of chicks had hatched the previous week. He pointed excitedly at the tiny yellow fluff balls pecking at the ground. "Look, they're so soft. You have to touch them carefully." Emily knelt down beside him, her hand hovering over a chick before letting it settle gently on her palm. The tiny creature trembled slightly, and Emily's heart warmed at the delicate life in her hand. Thomas watched them from a short distance, feeling a mixture of awe and concern. He could see the bond forming tangible in the way Samuel's small hand rested near hers and the quiet comfort Emily seemed to radiate. It was beautiful, yes, but it also stirred something in him that he hadn't felt in years. A protective instinct, a desire to keep his son safe, and a slow creeping realization that his heart was opening too. As the morning continued, Thomas called them back to the farmhouse for breakfast. They sat together at the table, and the conversation flowed easily. Samuel chattered about the animals, the garden, and the chores he wanted to show Emily later. Emily laughed quietly, answering his questions and sharing her own little stories about the places she had visited and the people she had met along the way. Her voice was soft but steady, and Thomas could see the kindness and resilience shining through every word. After breakfast, Thomas took Emily aside, away from Samuel, into the small study near the front of the house. He closed the door gently and turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "Emily, there's something I need to ask you," he began carefully. "I know you've been through a lot. You've lost so much. And I don't want to pressure you, but Samuel, he feels a connection with you that's very real. And I think I feel it too. Do you feel it?" Emily's eyes widened slightly. She had been waiting for this question but feared it would come too soon. She took a deep breath and spoke honestly. "Yes, Thomas, I feel it. I don't understand why, but I feel safe here and happy. I've been so alone for so long, but with Samuel, with you, I feel like I might belong somewhere again." Thomas nodded slowly, absorbing her words. His mind raced with possibilities and fears. He had spent years raising Samuel alone, protecting him, shielding him from pain. Could he truly let someone new into their lives? Could he risk opening his own heart again, knowing the potential for loss? And yet, looking at Emily, seeing the way she had connected with his son, he realized that some opportunities couldn't be ignored. Meanwhile, Samuel waited impatiently near the stairs, unaware of the conversation between his mother and father-to-be. He had sensed that something important was happening, but did not fully understand it. He fidgeted slightly, then called out softly, "Emily, are you coming back soon? I want to show you the garden." His voice was filled with innocent expectation. Emily smiled, feeling her heart swell with warmth. "Yes, Samuel," she called back. "I'll be there in a moment." She glanced at Thomas, who gave a small, reassuring nod. It was as if they had reached an unspoken agreement. Trust and patience would guide the next steps, but the connection between them would not be ignored. When Emily rejoined Samuel, they walked together to the vegetable garden. Samuel proudly showed her the tomatoes, carrots, and beans he had planted, explaining how he had watered and tended them each day. Emily listened intently, helping him carefully water the plants and gently tending the soil. Samuel beamed, delighted that she was interested and involved. As they worked side by side, Emily felt a sense of belonging she had not experienced in years. The simple act of planting and caring for life alongside Samuel was grounding and comforting. She began to realize that this little boy had not only captured her heart, but had opened a door to hope, trust, and family she thought she would never have again. Thomas, watching from the porch, felt a quiet shift within himself. He saw Emily's laughter, her patience, and her kindness, and he realized that his protective instincts were slowly giving way to admiration and trust. He knew that accepting Emily into their lives fully would require courage, but he also knew that it was the right choice. For Samuel, for Emily, and perhaps even for himself. Later that afternoon, Thomas decided it was time for a more serious conversation. He led Emily to the edge of the fields, away from Samuel, who was exploring near the barn. The wind carried the scent of earth and grass, and the sun cast a warm glow over the landscape. Thomas took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "Emily," he began, his voice steady but gentle, "I've been thinking a lot about what yesterday and today have shown me. Samuel, he feels a bond with you that I cannot explain, and I see it too. But I also know that trust takes time. I need to be sure that you want to be here, with us, for the long term. Can you do that?" Emily met his gaze, her eyes steady and sincere. "Thomas, I want to be here. I want to be part of your lives. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to try. I want Samuel to have a family again, and I want to belong somewhere." Thomas felt a lump rise in his throat. Her words were simple, but they carried honesty, hope, and courage. He nodded slowly. Then, "We'll take this one day at a time. Samuel will need to understand, and so will I. But I think this can work, and I think it's meant to." Meanwhile, Samuel had wandered back to the spot where they had been speaking. He had overheard parts of the conversation and, with a child's clarity, ran toward them. "See, Dad?" he shouted, his arms outstretched. "I knew it. She's going to stay. She's going to be my mama." Emily knelt down, embracing him warmly. "Yes, Samuel. I'm going to stay if you'll have me," she said softly, her voice full of emotion. Thomas watched silently, his chest swelling with relief, gratitude, and an unfamiliar warmth that he had not felt in years. The three of them stood together in the field, a new family beginning to take shape. There was no need for grand declarations or ceremonies, just trust, love, and the quiet acceptance of what had already been set in motion. Emily had found a home. Samuel had found a mother, and Thomas had found a partner in rebuilding a life filled with hope. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they walked back toward the house together. Samuel held Emily's hand tightly, and Thomas followed closely behind, a quiet smile on his face. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine a future where laughter, love, and family could coexist alongside the work and responsibility of the ranch. And in that moment, under the warm glow of the evening sky, all three understood that life had given them a rare gift, a chance to heal, to love, and to belong. The next morning dawned bright and clear over the Hale Ranch. The sky was a soft blue, dotted with wisps of white clouds, and the air carried the fresh scent of grass, earth, and animals stirring to life. Emily awoke with a gentle sense of anticipation, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Last night, after all the quiet conversations, shared laughter, and small moments of connection, she felt that she had truly found a place to belong. The bond she shared with Samuel was undeniable, and the trust forming between her and Thomas was steady and growing. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with warmth and love. Downstairs, Samuel had already started his morning routines. He moved with energy and enthusiasm, his small feet pattering against the wooden floor as he prepared breakfast alongside Thomas. The smell of fresh bread, sizzling eggs, and warm milk filled the kitchen. Samuel hummed a cheerful tune as he worked, glancing at the staircase every few moments to check if Emily had joined them yet. "Emily," he called the moment he saw her appear. "Come on, breakfast is ready, and I want to show you the new calves after we eat." His voice was full of excitement, and Emily's heart warmed at his joy. She smiled, smoothing her hair and adjusting her simple dress before joining them at the table. Thomas looked up as Emily entered, offering a small, encouraging smile. "Good morning, Emily," he said softly. "I hope you slept well." Emily nodded, her lips curving into a gentle smile. "Yes, thank you. I haven't felt this rested in a long time," she replied, her voice calm and sincere. They sat together at the breakfast table, the three of them sharing food, stories, and laughter. Samuel chattered endlessly about the animals, the garden, and the chores he had already completed. Emily listened with genuine interest, occasionally asking questions or sharing her own observations. Thomas watched quietly, feeling a mix of admiration and relief. The connection between Emily and his son was undeniable, and it brought a sense of hope he had not felt in years. After breakfast, Samuel insisted on showing Emily the new calves. The tiny animals had been born only a few days earlier and were still wobbly on their legs. Samuel guided Emily carefully, showing her how to approach them gently and hold them securely. Emily laughed softly as one of the calves nuzzled her hand, and Samuel's eyes sparkled with delight at her joy. Thomas followed behind, observing the tender interaction. He realized that this young woman, who had walked into their lives unexpectedly, had a natural ability to nurture and connect with his son. It was not just her kindness that impressed him, but her patience, her attentiveness, and the way she seemed to understand Samuel in ways that went beyond words. As the morning turned to afternoon, Thomas decided it was time to have a more private conversation with Emily. He asked her to join him in the small study near the front of the house. The room was quiet, filled with soft light from the windows, and the air seemed still with anticipation. Thomas sat down, motioning for Emily to take a seat across from him. "Emily," he began carefully, "I want to talk about the future. Yesterday and even today, I've seen how close you and Samuel have become. It's clear that he trusts you, loves you, and feels safe with you. I want to ask you something important." He paused, searching her face for a response. Emily nodded, her hands folded in her lap. "Yes, Thomas, I'm listening," she said softly. Thomas took a deep breath. "I want to know if you're willing to be part of our family, not just for today, but for the long term. Samuel needs stability, love, and someone who will stay. And I want to be honest with you, I've begun to care for you as well. It won't be easy, and it will take time, but are you willing to try? Are you willing to be our family?" Emily's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to take his hand. "Thomas, yes," she whispered. "I've been so afraid for so long, but with you and Samuel, I feel safe. I want to stay. I want to be a mother to Samuel, and maybe even something more for you." Her voice trembled with emotion, but there was no hesitation in her words. Thomas felt a lump rise in his throat. The weight of years spent protecting himself and his son, the grief he had carried, and the fear of loss all pressed on him, yet they were tempered by the warmth of hope, trust, and love. He nodded slowly. "Then, we'll take it one day at a time. Samuel will need to see it, and so will I. But I believe this can work, and I believe it's meant to." At that moment, Samuel burst into the study, his small face glowing with excitement. "See, Dad? I knew it. She's going to stay. She's going to be my mama." He ran to Emily, wrapping his small arms around her waist in a tight, eager hug. Emily hugged him back, tears spilling down her cheeks as she whispered, "Yes, Samuel, I'm going to stay. I promise." Thomas stood back, watching them, a quiet smile on his face. He realized that some things in life didn't need to be explained. They simply were. The bond between his son and Emily was undeniable. The connection between him and Emily was growing stronger with every shared moment. And together they were beginning to form a family built on trust, love, and mutual care. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity and laughter. Emily helped Samuel collect eggs from the henhouse, water the garden, and even feed the older animals in the pasture. Samuel's joy was infectious, and Emily found herself laughing more freely than she had in years. Thomas watched from a distance, feeling a sense of peace he had not known since before his wife had passed. The ranch, once a place of routine and solitude, was now filled with warmth, laughter, and life. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, Thomas suggested a walk to the hill overlooking the ranch. They climbed together, Emily holding Samuel's hand, and Thomas walking just behind them. From the top of the hill, the entire property stretched out before them, the pastures, the barns, the garden, and the fields beyond. It was a view Thomas had always loved, but now it felt different. It felt like home, like the beginning of something new. Samuel ran ahead to a small rock near the edge of the hill and turned, beckoning Emily and Thomas to join him. "Look!" he shouted, pointing to the horizon. "Isn't it beautiful?" Emily knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around his small shoulders. "It is beautiful, Samuel," she said softly. and you've made it even more special for me." Thomas sat on a nearby rock, watching them. He felt a warmth spread through his chest, a quiet joy that had been absent for years. He realized that family was not just about blood, it was about love, trust, and being there for each other. Emily and Samuel had brought that back into his life, and he knew he could never take it for granted. As the evening progressed, they walked back toward the house together. The sky darkened to deep shades of blue, stars beginning to twinkle above. Samuel held Emily's hand tightly, and she leaned slightly toward him, smiling softly. Thomas followed closely, feeling a sense of contentment and hope he had not felt in years. When they reached the farmhouse, Emily and Thomas prepared a simple dinner together while Samuel set the table. They ate quietly at first, enjoying the calm and the warmth of the fire. Then Samuel began to tell stories about the day, about the chicks, the calves, and the garden. Emily laughed, sometimes softly, sometimes openly, and Thomas joined in, feeling the joy and connection growing stronger with each passing moment. After dinner, they gathered in the living room, sitting together as a family for the first time. Samuel curled up next to Emily on the couch, and Thomas sat close by. There was no need for words to explain the bond they shared. It was clear in the way they looked at each other, the way they leaned together, and the quiet understanding that they had found something rare and precious. As the night grew deeper, Thomas took a moment to reflect. Life had been difficult, filled with loss and hardship, but it had also brought unexpected blessings. Emily's arrival had changed everything. Samuel's happiness, her presence, and the growing connection between them all reminded him that sometimes life had a way of giving second chances when they were needed most. Finally, as they all prepared for bed, Samuel whispered to Emily, "I knew you were my mama. I always knew." Emily hugged him tightly, her heart full of emotion. "Yes, Samuel, I'm here. I'm your mama, and I'll always be here for you." Thomas watched them quietly, a tear glistening in his eye. He knew that their journey had only just begun, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hope, peace, and a deep, enduring love. Together, they would face whatever the future held, knowing that family was not just about the past or the hardships endured. It was about the love, trust, and care shared in the present. And so, under the quiet glow of the moon, the Hale Ranch became a home filled with laughter, warmth, and the promise of a new beginning. Emily had found a family, Samuel had found a mother, and Thomas had found a partner to share the journey of life with. They had each found what they had been missing, and together they were stronger, happier, and ready to face the world as a family united by love and trust.